Pre-hearing. Okay. Zok Tehillah Gemara. So, who is considered Nabikar? Somebody who says, "What do we need Rabbanim for?" Loi Shari Lon Urva. They never did anything significant like Mater and Oirev. Loi Osru Lon Yoina, or they didn't do anything significant Lechomer either to Asif something that we normally expected will be Mutter. Rava Kev Amaisi Treifasa de Binyamin Kamei. So this family of Binyamin Haraife would ask always, "What do the Rebbeinu do for me?" So when a treifa would come from Binyamin, he have a chazalba time if he was able to find a way to be materit, Amalii would tell him techsi the kasharina lechu urva. You see, I'm being mater for you something that you would have otherwise thought was awesome. Have a chazal time surah. If they asked him a shaila and he was going to answer, Amalii the same thing. Techsi the kasarna lechu yoyin. So Avram Weisbrod said over that there was a city that felt they don't need a Rav, and they didn't have a Rav. So somebody asked somebody from the city. Somebody asked, I'm trying to stay away from sensitive areas. So someone asked him, somebody from the city, how can you not have a Rav? Who passes your trials? He says, what's the big deal? We're all able to pass on our own trials. L'moshel, last week, my goiter, by mistake, put milk into our chicken soup. So we had to figure out what do we do. So it was a pasha of psak. Tasakim was mutter. So we were moderate. So you see, we can do it without the Rav. We don't need the Rav. Zak Gemara weiter. Rav Papa Omar could go into Omar Hani Rabbanon. If you say Hani Rabbanon, those rabbis, that's not in the Makavah de Kuwait to talk about the Rabbanim. As Rashi says, Hani Rabbanon, Ka'adam Shomer, Oisha Tamachochem, Yena Tamachochem, the Loshen Bizoi Huzeh. It's not a respectful way of mentioning, of referring to a Talmud Chacham. Shahaya loy loy my rabbi seinu shebemakom pliny. Lishnachrina could go into our Hani Rabbanon, not Hanu Rabbanon. Hani Rabbanon dechashu misaper shum davar merabbanon. When someone's saying something over from Rabbanon, Omer Hani Loshen Gnai hu Hani. It's Loshen Gnai. Aval Hanhu Rabbanon ein Gnai. So for this you have to appreciate the nuances of the language, but when you're speaking about a Rav in a not respectful fashion, that could be considered an apikaris. Zog to more weiter. Rav Papa ishtali. Rav Papa once forgot the Omar Hani Rabbanim. He himself referred to Rabbanim in the way that he himself said was not respectful. The Esav Betanisa, and because of that, he did tshuva and he sat in a tainus. Levi bar Shmuel, Rav Huna bar Chia, have come esakni mitbechois sifri devei Rabbi Yehuda. They were fixing the mantlach of the svarim of Rabbi Yehuda. Kimatu Megillas Esther. When they got to Megillas Esther, Amri said, "Ha Megillas Esther labai matbecha." Megillas Esther doesn't even probably doesn't really need a shemat, a mantle. What the right thing to do would have been to ask Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't need a mantle. They sort of paskined in a question mark sense to ask the question. That also looks disrespectful, Rabbi Yehuda told him, because the way you should do it, Rashi says, is go and ask Rabbi Yehuda, we do not need to have a mantle for Megillas Esther. But don't say, you don't need it, do you? That's also a not respectful way to speak, which is very common. But again, I don't know if what the Gemara considers disrespectful is considered disrespectful in today's language, the way the people speak today. Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Now the question as to whether or not it needs a mantle has to do with Kisvei HaKodesh or Metamis or Yadayim. And that's why they made it a kind of they should be Metamis Yadayim, so that they shouldn't be left with food, because it'll be Metamis the food. Why didn't they want Kisvei HaKodesh to be left with food? Because mice are near food and mice will damage the Kisvei HaKodesh. I guess there's a shaila if Megillas Esther is in that takana. Kazak to Gemara weiter. Rav Nachman Omar Zeh HaKoyer Rabbi B'Shemai. This is someone who refers to his Rebbe by his name. That's not an appropriate way to refer to a Rav. The Omer Rabbi Yochanan Mipnei Nenash Geichasi. Why was Geichasi Nenash? This is a very interesting point that the Gemara is going to make now. Mipnei Nenash Geichasi. Why did Geichasi get an oynish? right? He became a Mitzvah. He got into real trouble. Because he called his Rebbe by his first name. Shenemar vayomer Gechazi. Gechazi said, Adoni Hamelach, Zoisa Isha, V'zebina. This is the woman and the son. Asher Hechia Elisha, that Elisha was Machaya. Not that my Rebbe was Machaya, that Elisha was Machaya. Now the problem with this Gemara is, and Rabbi Victor Miller speaks it out in his Sefer on Chelek, that Danny Deanna was kind enough to buy for me and drop off at my house Sunday morning. So I read through today's daf on it, and he says, if you know Navi, you will know that Gechazi said this to the king long after his Einish he got his Einish. So how could this be the reason why he was Nenash, if in fact this is much later? Number two is we know why he was Nenash. He was Nenash because his Rabbi Elisha healed Naaman, who was a king or a general, from his tsaras. And Elisha told Gehazi, we're not taking a penny from him. We're doing this because the Kiddush Shem Shemayim. And Gehazi went and approached Naaman and said, yeah, my master wants you to give him something. And then he took some payment from the king when Elisha had specifically told him not to. That's when he got his Einish. So the question is that caused Einish. So how come the Gemara is making the Einish be for something that happened so much later? Zakir by Victor Miller, a very interesting point. What was the avla of the fact that he took it? Gehazi didn't go to Naaman and say, give me money. He said, my Rebbe wants me to go collect money from you. That was very, very disrespectful to his Rebbe. However, it's not often grub that it's disrespectful. Maybe he went well. Maybe he meant well. But later on, when he referred to Elisha,
use Elisha's name so he can get the money.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Because he was involved with it. But it could be he did. I don't know. But I'll call upon him. Later on, when he referred to his Rebbe by his own name, it showed it was a litmus test. It showed that he had zero respect for Elisha. So if he just would have made a mistake because he succumbed to the type of moment, that wouldn't have got him the punishment that got him. But that he did that because it stemmed from a lack of respect for Elisha, and that came out much clearer later on. So this pasuk, which happened later, actually shows us what Gehazi's attitude was back then, and that's what the Einish is for. That's what the Rabbi Victor Miller says. Yosy Rabbi Yirmiyah kamed Rab Zera. Rab Zera was sitting in front of Rab Zera. The Yosy v'Ka'amar. Now there's a machlokes here if it's Rab Zera talking or if it's Rabbi Yirmiyah talking. Rashi learns that it's Rab Zera talking. Also, the Kadosh Baruch Hu l'haitzi nachal mi beis kachei HaKadosh. Eventually, Lasid Loved Rabban Shem is going to have a small stream river that comes out of the Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. The olav, and on them will be kol mini begadim. So on either side of the river, on the banks, will grow the most delicious sweet pears. Shenemer v'lamachal yala al sufasoi mizeh u'mizeh kol eitzmaichol lo yiboy oileyu. Its leaves will never crumble and decay. Lo yita imperioi, and its pears will never stop. L'chadosha jivaker, every month it'll have a new, beautiful, fresh, ripe batch of pears. Why? Because the water that's nourishing these trees are from the mikdash itself. Rabbi Victor Miller also speaks out that really pears had a much sweeter taste, and the earth produced so much more, and we our meisim deteriorated that. Adam first caused a deterioration. He was put on a Gan Eden, and then by the Mabul there was further deterioration. So Rabbi Victor really likes to bring scientific facts, and some of the scientific facts that he said is if you dig in the Arctic and you dig down very, very deep, you will find that there's vegetation there and there's coral reef there. Why? Because originally there were no 4 seasons until the Mabul, and the Earth was turned on its axis. Now we have 4 seasons. So he likes proving scientifically that the world was once straight, it did not spin on its axis, and in fact, it was spring everywhere all the time. So therefore, even in the Arctic, there was beautiful vegetation that grew. So he said, and Huadin, there was a much deeper time of Paris, but our corruption blocked us from having those. He says, as a matter of fact, even nowadays, you find sometimes a new fruit is discovered. He was talking about some apple, some golden crisp apple that I guess in the 60s, he said there was no breeding that was done and grafting that was done. One day, a farmer in his farm saw that this type of apple grew, and suddenly now everybody has this type of apples. He says, Hashem was like giving the world a glimpse and a taste of what's really in the bria that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is withholding from us. That la'asan lavoi, Hashem is going to reveal all that to us again. Amalai Husaba. Yiyasher, you know what? You're right. So some fellow said, yeah, you know, Rabbi Zeir is right. Rabbi Yochanan also says that. Amar le Rabbi Yirmiyah. Now, the way I understand it, because you see the brackets take out Yiyasher. I think it was the Husabo said, and Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing. That's how I understand it. Unless the Archbishop said that the Gemara is saying that. I thought that the old man was saying that Rabbi Yochanan also agrees to you. I think you're right, and Rabbi Yochanan also agrees to you. I think that's what it means. Okay, Zok Gemara. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zeir. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Rabbi Zeir, Kihai Gavna, the way this person sort of said that you're right, like he's giving you a haskama, mechse av karusa. Is this something that doesn't look right? So let me look at Rashi. Look at Rashi. Amalei Husaba Yiyasher v'chein Rabbi Yochanan kidvarecha. So it sounds like it's the Husaba, right? Husaba was quoting, I agree with you, and Rabbi Yochanan agrees with you as well. Rabbi Yochanan nami hachi kamer kedamrit. Rabbi Yochanan also is like you say, my Rebbe. So that's how Rashi learns. But like you're seeing in the v'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan Yiyasher. So Rashi is saying it's the first. We're not quoting from a Husaba and the separate member from Rabbi Yochanan. It's a Husaba that said Rabbi Yochanan also agrees with you. So he wanted to know, is this Afkarus or not? Amalei, no. Hi, siyue kamisaya. He's bringing a riot. Depending on if who's talking, Reb Zeir or Rabbi Yirmiyah, based on the shayla we said earlier, it would make a difference at how you go. Okay. But if you hear this, then you would have an issue of a disrespect as follows. Shmilach Yad Yosef Rabbi Yochanan the Kedarish. Rabbi Yochanan was Darshman, famous Gemara. Also the Kadosh Baruch Hu Lahavi Avadim Toivos Umargolios. Kadosh Baruch Hu is eventually going to bring big boulders of diamond, Shloishim al Shloishim Amos, that are 30 Amos by 30 Amos, that's 60 Amos by 60 feet by 60 feet roughly. V'chayik Bahem Eser Barum Esrim, and he will chisel out of these big blocks of diamond windows that will be 10 wide by 20 Amos high. Umamidam Bishara Yerushalayim, and he would put them Bishara Yerushalayim. It would more be not windows but gateways, like entranceways. Shenemar Vesamti Katkoid Shimshei Shayach. I will use gems like diamonds. Usharayich LaAvne Ekta, and I will mine stones for the gates of Yerushalayim. So Liglev Olav Oisai Talmud. The Talmud laughed. That's ridiculous. It cannot be. Amar Hashvik Kebayasa the Tziltzala Loy Mashkechinam. It's hard to find diamond that's even more than like 10 carats, right? The size of the egg of a small bird. Kula Hai Mashkechinam, and suddenly we're going to find these vast amounts of diamonds and massive diamonds. So he doubted what Rabbi Yochanan said. The Yomim, it happened. So Victor Miller says, who would travel along could be merchants or wealthy people? Well, only a wealthy people would open up his mouth to Rabbi Yochanan like that. He says in this dry way. So this was a wealthy person. Because in the Malachai Asharis, he had a vision that there were Malachai Asharis. The monastery, so this doesn't literally mean that he was in the middle of the ocean and he sees this. This is a vision. Because in the Malachai Asharis, the monastery of Adam Toibus or Megalios. Amar Lahu, he asked him, Hani Laman, what are they for? Amri, they said, Azar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, La'amidan B'shara Yushalayim. So Kihadar Ashkel Rabbi Yochanan, the Yosef Kadarish, when he heard Rabbi Yochanan dashing this again, Amalei, the Gevir tells Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Deraish, you could go on and say that. And it makes sense. Because Kashem Shamart, just like what you're saying here, is unbelievable as it sounds. Kach easy, I saw it with my own eyes. That's right. So Omar Loi says that Rabbi Yochanan was not afraid of a wealthy man. You know what he called the wealthy man? Reika, you empty-headed person. It's very funny how he says it. Im Loi Ra'is Loi Hamanta. So if you wouldn't have seen it, you wouldn't have believed it because I said so. That's someone who doesn't have Kovik Chacham. That's a malagleg al divrei chacham mata. You are a malagleg al divrei chacham. Yoy va'enei. Rabbi Yochanan gave this man a dirty look. V'asay gal shalot shamas. Made him into a sack of bones. Which means he dies. But Rabbi Miller says it does not mean he died right away. Gal shalot shamas. It does not mean someone died immediately. Didn't drop dead. It means his body started to deteriorate and he got weaker and weaker until he ended up being just like a sack of bones. I hear it. How do you know? They say, so this is it's in her A. It's in one of the early parshas in Sefer Dvarim. And Hashem lakech masher says yeschem eretz b'trayim mihiyois lahem avodim v'eshpor moitos ulchem. I will break the yokes of your hard work. V'oilech eschem koyim and I'll bring you up high. What does that mean? I'll make you up high. Every person will be 200 amas high. Hashem is going to restore the strength of our bodies to its original glory. Kishtei koimos shel Adam Harishon, like twice the height of Adam Harishon was after he was diminished. Adam used to be Misai Failam Batzai Failam. After he was thrown out of Gan Eden and he was diminished, he was limited to 100 amas. And koimimius, you'll be a double height of Adam Harishon, you'll be 200 amas. Rabbi Yehuda, so again, Rabbi Yehuda says, because there's so much great nourishment in the Peiros Haaretz that really that's what we should be very strong and healthy from eating them. But Hashem took away much of the nourishment value that will eventually be restored. So Zok to Gemara. Zok to Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Kuf Amma, there'll be 100 amas. Connected Heichel the Koislov. Connected the Heichel and its Koislov. Now there's a shaila if it's referring to the height of the Heichel in the second base of Mikdash or the length of the Heichel in the first base of Mikdash. Shenemar Asher bin Yonoi Asher Banenu. There are our sons. Let me just read it properly inside. Asher Banenu, our sons. I got to zoom over to see it. I'm sorry. Asher Banenu Kinetiyim Egudalim, like big towers. B'nureim in their youth, and b'neisenu and our daughters will be kezaviyos mechutavos, like the corners of the big towers. Tavnes heichel. So as an aside, again, Rabbi Bigman says, why are the boys compared to a tower and the girls only to a quarter? Because girls are normally hatzna lechas and they're not out there, so they're like a corner, which is more concealed, but will be very big in those days. So Zog to Gemara, Ki Kamar Rabbi Yochanan, He Kamar Rabbi Yochanan l'chvi the vezika. So what Rabbi Yochanan meant when he says that the windows are only going to be amma high, because the kasha is how could you walk through a doorway that's only 100 amas high if you're 200 amas high? So Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan said that these openings are not going to be for entrance; they're made for wind to ventilate the Beis Hamikdash. L'chvi, the windows, the vezika. How does is it pronounced? Kvi? What's it pronounced that word? L'chavi the vezika. Dr. Gemara, ma'va aleyu l'sruf. The pasuk said that the leaves will be a serufa, which is a lashon refuah. But it expresses it in a bad way. It doesn't say Valeyu l'refuah, the leaves will be refuah. It says Valeyu l'srufa, which is a little bit unusual way of saying refuah. So that means the leaves of the trees that are going to grow along the banks of this river that's going to come out of the Kodesh, they will be l'srufa. So exactly what healing properties do they have? And Ritik Baravu Dimai, Rab Chista. Chadamar, one of them says Lahater Peshal Ma'ila. If someone could not speak, he was an Elam. It will allow him to speak again. The Chadamar, and Rabbi Miller touches this as paralysis. If someone has paralysis, but so something doesn't work, he has the Aver, but the Aver doesn't work, this leaf will have that healing property. Again, it's a woman who she has a reproductive system, but she's not zoicha to children. The leave will be able to heal that as well. Itmar Chizki Amar Lahater Pet Ilmin. It will allow someone who couldn't speak to speak again. Rakapar Amar Lahater Pet Ikris. So if one's an akara, which is referring to like the peshamata. Rabbi Yochanan Amar L'Sarufa Mamish. What does he mean by that? My L'Sarufa. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar L'Toyar Panim Shel Balei Apeh. Balei Apeh are those who learn Torah, right? We refer to Torah as Peh several times yesterday. So Balei Apeh, meaning Talmidei Chacham who learn Torah, they're going to have they'll be beautifully good looking in the future. Darish Rabbi Yehuda Bar Simon. So you might ask, why would a Talmid Chacham not be beautiful? The Torah says he's mashkir panav divrei Torah, meaning he sacrifices himself. In the mazeh, he's not properly nourished because generally Talmidei Chacham don't have money, so they're not properly nourished and not properly taken care of. So that has an effect of making someone look worn, wind battled and old. So it's sort of mashkir his panav. But he'll be zoichel asid lavoi, that he'll use these leaves, and he'll get a facial with these leaves, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu mavik zivai la'olam haba. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make him beautiful la'olam haba. Shenemar mar'eyu kelevanoin bachor karos. And if you ever smell the wind that comes off the mountains of Lebanon, you would smell the beautiful scent that comes off of them. But he also explains on a different level. Today, people who are noticed, who are the leaders of society, the wealthy and the powerful. The Talmid Chacham, if people look at a guy who lived in Koil for 20 years, he's perceived a little bit as a loser. You never got anywhere. Talmidei Chacham aren't considered the pinnacle of society. It's the wealthy that are. So this is a figurative concept. This river that's going to come out of the Beis HaMikdash is not a real river of water. It's referring to there'll be a wave of daya. There'll be a wave of appreciation for Torah. There'll be a wave of clarity that'll show what is the most important thing in life and show what's the most choshev in life. And that's ultimately going to raise the stature of the Talmidei Chachamim who Moshe never to learn, because now people will realize that this is what's most important. This is what's supposed to be admired. So this whole thing, Victor Miller, is a mushal. It's not a real river, according to this pshat. Okay. If someone is married, he hungers himself, meaning the learning and not pranasa, he is suffering. And if someone does that, then the Kadosh Baruch Hu maspir in the Olam Haba, he is going to be very satisfied, very well taken care of. Shenemar yirvayun mideshen v'secha v'nachal adonachas hashkein. They're going to be very well satisfied from B'deshem Esecha, and they'll have plenty of drink. V'nachal adonachas hashkein. Yosy Avdimi Omar. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to give each tzaddik a full handful of his of goodness. Again, this is all Musholim. Hashem doesn't have hands and a handful. Shenemar Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Yamos Lanu Hakel Yeshua Seinu Selim. Amalei Abaye. How is it possible for a human to be able to absorb a handful of what a Kadosh Baruch Hu gives? HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to hold all of the universe in a zeres, which is the distance from someone's finger to someone's thumb. So the entire universe, if you had to measure it, which is light years and light years, it's vast, it fits in between Hashem's pinky and Hashem's thumb. So could you imagine how big his handful is? How could a person absorb that? Again, Rabbi Victor Miller explains this on a theoretical level, not so much on a practical level. Hashem's not dumping on us gifts. What it is if sometimes if someone hears an unbelievable news item that's unbelievably good, someone tells him he won the Powerball, won $100 million, someone could faint from that because his conscience can't even absorb such good news so fast. I say, try me, but I'll call him. Yeah, but I would be from the 10%. They say 100% of the people say that. So I'll call upon them. So that's what it means. How will we be able to even absorb that greatness? Amar lay, oh, you got a problem. My time why don't you learn more agadita? So that's what he told. That's what he told Abaye. So Abdimi told Abaye, you don't tuzach harayin enough in agadita, because if you did, you would know. Every Yid is going to get 310 worlds. And the Rebbe is careful to point out, it doesn't mean 3 globes, 3 planets. The Olam is the entire universe. So each person will have 310 universes. That's plenty of space to handle all of the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give. Yesh is Bigamatria 310, but you're saying Amalek. Yesh Bigamatria plus Meva Saravu. So you know what? There'll be plenty of room to absorb all the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem treats you in the same way you treat him. The same measurement. This is referring to when we went out of Mitzrayim. Bisasa, Bishulcha to Rivana. We were swept out of Mitzrayim, but we darshan it, Bisasa. It's pound for pound that we get. You'll be paid back pound for pound. Rabbi Shua, can you say that? Adam Noisen, if you give a full handful of stuff to an ani in the Olam Hazeh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Noisen loy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give you your full handful back. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you his full handful back. How can you say that? I vaksiv v'shamayim b'herestike in the same kasha we had a moment ago, that Abai asked a moment ago. So he answered back, "V'ata yata omer kain." But you're not going to agree with me that this is true. You're going to say that he doesn't give back more. Well, let me ask you a question. Ezahi mida maruba. Is it mida toiva maruba or mida paradu? Turning on to Amud Beis. Hava omer. What are you going to say? Of course, Hava omer mida toiva maruba. Of course, mida toiva is a maruba from midas paranios. Okay, how do I know this? Hashem opened up to drop good things on us. The doors of heaven, which Rashi says are 4 times the size of windows. And by Midas Paranius it says, I guess by Noach it says, only the windows opened. We're going to go out and see. They went out and saw the carcasses of the people that were Poshay in their Bani Shalom. Their worms in their body won't die, meaning even though they're burning in Gehenna, the fire will not consume them. They're going to be sustained. The isham and their fire will never go out. And they'll be an example to everybody. In fact, I don't understand how could this happen. If you put your finger into a big fire, you're going to be burned. So how is it that these bodies forever and ever are going to be burning and they're not going to be consumed? It's not possible. Ella, what are you forced to say? Obviously, what's happening is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making it that their bodies will be sustained even though they're in fire, so that they should be able to absorb the full pain of the oynish that they deserve. So we proved that Midah Tova is better than Midah Paranius. And by Midah Paranius, we said HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give koyach and sustenance to these bodies to be able to feel the full oynish. So that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do that l'toiv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do it l'ra. He will surely do it l'toiv and make us be able to sustain the greatness of the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us. Rabbi Kiva Omer af hakoyrei b'svarim achitzonim. Even if you read external books, so I was salivating just thinking what Rabbi Victor is going to say about this. So it wasn't as exciting. It was a letdown. Tana b'sifrei tzedaikim. It says in the Sifrei Tzedaikim. So right away it says, you can't really call them Sifrei Tzedaikim. Well, if you look it up, he didn't say Wikipedia, but if you look it up in the encyclopedia, what Tzedaikim by Susamar, they'll say they took a different approach to understanding the Torah. That's not true. They were not principled people who were educated and had a different opinion. They just wanted to be Pyric oil. And their Svarim aren't Svarim at all. They're excuses. So Zakti Gemara Rabbi Yosef, Omer, it's not Sifra Tzedaikim, it's even the Sefer Ben Sira. Nami Aser Lamikri. It's also to read the Sefer Ben Sira. No, the Sefer Ben Sira, the Rishonim say somewhere that Ben Sira might have been the son of Yirmiyah Hanavi. What happened? Yirmiyah Hanavi was in a mikveh, and then they didn't change the water. And a woman went into the mikveh, and she was impregnated by Yirmiyah Hanavi. It was the first case of IVF in world history. And Ben Sira was born from that. There is a sheet of that. And he wrote a sefer that had some wisdom in it and some nonsense in it. So that was the book that shouldn't be read because it contains nonsense. Omer Le'abaye, I don't understand. I'm going to show you several examples of wisdom that's based on the Torah that Ben Sira offered. Omer Le'abaye. Now, also Rabbi Victor Miller says, very interesting enough, Ben Sira was a very big chassid of Shimon HaTzadik, I think he was a Kohen Gadol. And he would follow him. And most of his Torah he said he learned from Shimon HaTzadik. And says he wrote the Pismon that we said in Kippur, Mara Kohen. How beautiful the shine, the face of the Kohen was. Ben Sira wrote that. That's, I don't know where Rabbi Victor Miller got it from, but that he mentions that in the Sefer. So Dr. Amalei Abaye, my timer. Why would you say that Ben Sira says nonsensical things? I'm going to show you he says very good principle things. It says, don't skin a fish. Normally you skin it from its gills, so the Gemara is referring to it as his ears. Don't take the skin off the fish. Why? Because what are you going to do with the skin of the fish if you skin it before you prepare it to eat? You're going to throw it in the garbage. So that the skin of the fish shouldn't go into the garbage. Ella, what should you do? You should roast the fish with its skin, and that will allow you to get so much more nourishment out of the fish because of Echel Beitarten Gritzen. You'll be able to eat two chalas with it instead of one. In other words, it'll considerably increase the nutritious value of the fish. Now, if you think there's a problem with what he said over here, by rice and namikaf, the Torah also says something similar. What did the Torah say? That when you're laying siege around the city, you're not allowed to destroy its wood. Meaning, if there's a resource, if there's something of value that Akash Baruch Hu gave, you're not allowed to destroy it. And imidrasha, and if it's just a concept that he's talking about, so if you're saying, he's directly saying, don't destroy the food value here, well, you see that there's a makor to that in the Torah. And if he wasn't directly referring to this case, he was trying to say something general, that you shouldn't waste resources. For instance, you shouldn't be boil a woman shaloi kedaka, because then your zera goes levatola, and it's wasting resources. So if that's what he's trying to teach you, the concept of not wasting resources, well, the elamishum, so that's also a concept that's in the Torah. So therefore, you can't write off the Sefer Ben Sira because of this comment. The elamishum, or maybe you want to say it's a different comment. It says bas lavia mitmoinas shav. It's not such a great gift to have a daughter. It's only trouble if a father has a daughter. You might think it's an advantage because he gets her ma'aseh yadayim, whatever she works, he gets to keep. But no, it's not a blessing at all. You know why? Because mipachta, from fear, lo yishan balayla, he'll never sleep at night. Bikatnu, so when she's a little child, shematis pateh, we're afraid that someone will violate her. B'nai rusa, when she's a little bit more, when she's a little more developed, shematizna, maybe she'll on her own be mizana. Bagra, once she's more sensible, that's not going to happen. Shemalotinase, maybe she won't find the shidduch. Niseis, and once she finds the shidduch, Shemelo yilabanim, you're worried she won't have children. Hiskinan, even when she's an old woman, Shematasik shafim, she might get involved in kishuv. So therefore, having a daughter is nothing but worry. Zok to Gemara, this is not a foreign concept. The Rabbanan say a similar concept. It says, the world needs male children and female children. But Asher Misha Banav Zachorim, Oy Loy Misha Banav Kevos. But you're still better off having sons and not daughters. Of course, there are those who learn is Asher Misha Banav Zachorim. Blessed is the person whose male children are Zachorim. Oy Loy, woe to the man whose children are Nekevos. Now, this is not referring to trans. Right. It's not referring to, it means a son who acts like a Nekeva. He's not Amal B'Torah and he doesn't do the things that he should. But in today's day and age, it opens up a whole new pshat. Oy l'mi shabanav nekevas. Ela mishum d'chsiv, or maybe there's a third comment that Ben Seira made. D'chsiv lo yisoil davya belibach. Don't worry. You shouldn't allow worry in your heart. The gavra belibach the gavri. The gavri given kotol davya, because worry killed some great people. Zok Gemara, Hashleim Omer. This is also a concept that was shared to us by Shleim HaMelech. Daiga belevish yashichena. Someone who has daiva, he's like yashichena. What does this pasuk mean? Rabbi Rabasi Chadamar yasichena midaitoi. He should speak it out and push it away. It's not speak it out. He should push it away from his heart. He should not think about that. He shouldn't allow the worry to overcome him. The Chadamar yasichena lachem. You should share it with another person. But of course, if someone lost his job and he's very worried about his parnosa, he shouldn't tell his wife. If his boss said that you're doing a great job, that you should tell your wife. But don't tell your wife when your boss screams at you. In other words, don't tell your daika to somebody who will become even more worried. You have to tell your daika to someone who can help you work it through, that you shouldn't be worried. So again, that proves that Ben Sira's comments are very well grounded in Torah concepts. Don't allow too many people to come to visit your house. You shouldn't, maybe once in a while someone visit you, but your house shouldn't be open that you should have crowds walking through your house. And what would be wrong with that? So Zok Gemara bar Rabbi Nami Amar. This is a concept that Rabbi taught us. To tell you Rabbi Amar, you shouldn't have too many people in your house. Ish Rayim. It's only going to mess you up. You know why it's going to mess you up? Because if you have too many friends, it's inevitable that you're not going to get into a fight with one of them. The Rashi explains, why shouldn't you let too many people in your house? Even people who you have business with, keep them out of your house. Talk business on the porch. You should always keep them outside. Don't get too many people in your house. You should know what's going on inside your house. Okay? So far, we had several comments Ben Sira made, and there's nothing wrong with it. So what's the problem? Zok Gemara, this is the following is the problem. If somebody's beard is split into two sides and in the center it's bald, it means he probably thinks a lot and pulls his hair out. So that's kurtimon. That's going to be a smart guy, a sharp guy, a conniving person. Avdakam, but if he has a nice big beard, Saxon, he's probably a fool. The nafach bekase, if someone blows on his tea because it's too hot, loy tzachi, he's probably not thirsty. If he says, Amar b'mai eicha lachma, if you give him bread and he says, what am I supposed to eat this bread with? That means lachma sav minei. Take the lechem away from him. If he was hungry, he wouldn't ask questions. He would just eat the bread. Man de islay mavarte bedikne. I think I might have touched kurtaman wrong. What does Rashi say by kurtaman up on top over here? Sorry? Oh, Yiswar, okay. But kurtaman means he has a small beard, right? Not that it's torn in the middle. I apologize. It just means he has a thin beard. It's not a thick, lush beard. It's a sign that he's smart. Now we're getting up to the split beard. So Zok to Gemara, if he has a hole in his beard, meaning he's pulled hair out, no one will be able to outsmart him. He's a very shrewd guy. Because the guy's always thinking, when you think, you pull your beard. So that means he got a bald spot on his beard. That means he's a guy who's always concentrated and thinking, meaning he's a conniving guy. So these things don't make sense. And therefore, we don't touch him in Sira. So Rabbi Miller explains, could be there are two Ben Siras, but also could be that Ben Sira's Chochmah was said orally. It was not written into a sefer. And over time, people forgot what he said and modified things and said things over wrong. So really, his sefer is good, but like anything that you read, you can't believe everything that you read, and not everything is appropriate. So Amar Yosef, nevertheless, Mili Mal Yosef de Ispe, there's some very wise things written in Sefer Masira that you're allowed to learn. For instance, one of the things he wrote was Isha Toiva, a good wife, is a Matana Toiva Bechek Yirei Elokim Tinase. It's a great gift that was given into the lap of a Yirei Elokim. If you have a good wife, you have a good life. Isha Ra, but a bad wife, Tsaras Labaila. She's like Tsaras. My Takante, how do you fix that? Yigar Shenem Ibesoy. Divorce her, and then v'yisrape mitzaraita. Isha Yafa. Now, Pashba Isha Yafa means she's a beautiful woman. She's physically beautiful. Ashrei Baila. Lucky is her husband. Mispar Yomov Keflayim. His days are doubled, and Rashi says, because he has so much pleasure from her, he has enough pleasure to last 2 lifetimes. The Marsha says, it means an Isha Yafa is a woman who's a proper wife and smart. So he'll treat her, she will treat her very well, so he'll have a good life. It's like he has 2 lives. I'm sorry, the Marsha says more. She'll be a good wife and she'll run a beautiful household, then he'll be Zoicha not only to Olam Hazeh, but through her he will be Zoicha to Olam Haba because of the structure in the household. Like most of our wives, they're the guardrails to keep to protect our houses. They're the ones who are forcing us down the path of Olam Haba. Halay meinecha me'eshes chein. What you should never look at a beautiful woman because that's a very dangerous trap. You're going to get trapped in her trap, and chas Hashem you could be nichshel. Don't even go over to visit her husband to have a party with him because she's there and it's very dangerous. Because of the beautiful woman, Rabim Hushkosu, many people were destroyed. It led them to Aveira and it destroyed them. Vatsumim, and strong and mighty, Kol Harugeh are all the men that a beautiful woman can take down. Rabim Hayu Pitzei Roichel. You know who else has trouble? A Roichel. A Roichel is someone who sells spices and cosmetics from house to house. He's very much intertwined with women and it could lead to an Aveira. And in fact, many Roichlim did Averis. So why didn't they ban them? Because Ezra Sefer made a takana that there should be Roichlim in every city selling women products that will make them beautiful to their husbands. But nevertheless, the Roichel himself often got into trouble. That's a Rabbi who pits the Roichel. You know why? Because a husband would come home and he would see a Roichel fooling around with his wife and he would beat him. So if you see a guy walking down the street with a black eye, you can assume he's probably a Roichel that got caught by the husband. Hamargilim ledvar erva, those who bring someone to an avera, bad influences, are kenitzutz marva gechelos. It's like a spark that's going to cause a huge flare up in a flame and burn things down. Kikluv molei, just like a chicken coop, you cannot conceal what's happening inside it. You're always going to see feathers around the chicken coop, so it'll be obvious that there's chickens inside. Kain batayim maleim mirma. So too, the houses of Balei Chet, it comes out. The rumor cuts out. You can only conceal bad things for so long. It's repeating what we said earlier. And the Rabbim Yu Dorshe Shloimecha. You should have a lot of friends, but Gali Soidach Le'echad Me'elef. Don't tell too many of your friends. You shouldn't tell them all your personal issues. 1 in 1,000 you should share your issues with. Okay? Even your wife who you're so close with, don't tell her all your deep secrets. You have to be very careful what you're going to tell your wife. Don't be worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. You have no idea if you'll even be around tomorrow. And you're worried about something that's not even relevant to you. If you notice, until now we were talking about first party. Now we're speaking about third party over here, because when we're talking about Einenu, we don't want to say the Gemara doesn't want to use a lotion or someone's going to die. Now, call you may ani roim. All the days of an ani are bad. That's what it says in the pasuk. But Sira Aimer, you know what this means? Af leilois, even at night, the ani has a bad. Why? Because bishval gagam gagli. He lives at the bottom of the hill. So all of the rain that runs off the roofs of the higher levels drip down on his roof. So even a small rain on his roof, it's going to sound like a storm because he gets all the runoff. On the other hand, topsoil, which is valuable, his place to cultivate and plant, his vineyard will be way up at the top of the mountain. So therefore, mimoter gagim legagoy. All their rain is going to run off on his roof. But the topsoil from his vineyard is going to be washed away from the rain, and it'll go down. So if you're at the bottom of the mountain, you never have to buy topsoil because the topsoil runs down from your neighbors above. But you're always forced to replenish your topsoil. Simon Zera, Rava, Mesharsha, Chanina, Tuvia, Yanai, Yafa, Yochanan, Merachim, Yeshua, Mekatzer. Amr Abzer, Amr Rav. My dechsiv, it says in the Pasuk, Ani Royim, Elu Bali Talmud. It's referring to people who learn Gemara, because when you learn Gemara, you have to hurry. You never have a vacation. It's always hard work. The type of Mishnah Talmud, Elu Bali Mishnah, because the Shnayos are easy to learn. Rav Amr, Punkt Lakeret Ibcha. If you are mining and quarrying the stones, that's very, very hard. It's big, heavy work. He will become sad from it. It hurts him. That's what Mishnah is. You're cultivating large, vast amount of information without really having clarity of what they are. That's painful. Mishnah. But if you're chopping wood, you could use that wood to warm you. You benefit from it because you have a geschmack. Talmud. Because if you understand the Gemara geschmack, then you can paskin. It makes it much more real and useful for you. It's more enjoyable. That means the toiv life mishta tamid zeh sheyesh lo isha toiva. Rabbi Yannai Aimer kolimei ani royim zeh istinus. Someone who's in istinus is always in a bad mood. He can't make anything. He's always complaining. Complainers, they have a rough life because everything is difficult for them. The toiv life mishta tamid zeh shadate yafa. A guy who can handle things, he'll enjoy life much better. Rabbi Yannai Aimer Amar kolimei ani royim zeh rachmani. Somebody who's soft-hearted, and he feels so bad for everybody. He's feeling everybody's tzoros his whole life. He's miserable, like a rav or a rebbe who has to listen to tzoros all day. Their life is miserable. That's how they live with. The title of Mishatom is sorry, you don't give a damn about anybody else. I'm good, right? Rabbi Shimon Levi Amar Kol Yimei Ali Royim Zeh Daitoi Zeh Shedaitei Sora. That somebody. It's actually the two pshatim. Either it's Mason Lilibai called Dagas Chaverei. He's always worried about what can happen to his friend. That's one shot. The other shot is Daitik Sara, he loses his temper. The Toiv of Mishatamid Zeshadat Rachva, meaning he can handle things. He's not such a pessimist thinking about what can go wrong. Or the other shot is that he doesn't get angry so fast. Okay, we'll stop here. Gewaltig.